Mira Rios stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror, the lace of her wedding dress glowing ivory against her honey-brown skin. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear it beneath the clipped breaths of anticipation. Outside, the old chapel's bell tolled 7 times, a soft reminder that in 4 hours she would stand before Jay and vow forever. Yet something tugged at her chest, an unnameable dread she could not shake. Lena, her maid of honor and lifelong friend, knocked twice on the door. "Mira, everything okay in there?" Her voice wavered between excitement and concern. Inside, Myra's gaze flickered to the bouquet of white lilies resting on the vanity. She wanted to reach for them, to feel a moment of peace, but her hand froze at her side. I need a minute," she whispered, fighting tears she didn't understand. Outside the room, Lena's footsteps echoed down the hallway. The corridor smelled of rose petals and polished wood, a contrast to the turmoil in Myra's mind. She pressed her palm against the cool glass of her window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. The world outside seemed calm, indifferent to the storm brewing behind closed doors. At 7:15 a.m., Jay arrived downstairs in a tailored charcoal suit, voice tight with nerves. He greeted family members with a shaky smile, eyes darting toward the staircase. He was handsome in a classic way, clean-shaven, warm brown eyes, laughter lines that deepened when he smiled. A part of Mira loved him fiercely. Decades of shared laughter and whispered secrets formed their bond. But another part recoiled, warning her something was terribly wrong. Lena returned, her face pale. "Mira isn't in there," she said, voice hushed. "Her phone's gone, too. I don't understand." Panic rippled through Jay's chest. He ran up the stairs 2 at a time, Lena close behind. Outside the chapel doors, the guests murmured. The florist's daughter wiped tears. The caterers exchanged worried glances. Something precious had slipped away. They found the door to Myra's suite ajar. The room was pristine, her veil still draped over a chair, slippers neatly placed by the bed. The morning light illuminated the untouched cake by the window. No note, no sign of struggle, only emptiness. Jay's hand trembled as he touched a single white lily that had rolled from the bouquet. "She wouldn't do this," he said, voice breaking. Lena shook her head, eyes brimming. "I know." Behind them, Uncle Trent emerged from the servant's wing, face schooled in calm indifference. "Probably cold feet," he suggested, voice measured. "Girls get scared." His words cut sharper than any slap. Jay turned to him, fury and fear mingling. "Don't you dare," he warned. But Trent only shrugged, already canceling orders on his phone. Time blurred. A hush fell over the compound. The chapel organist tapped a hesitant chord, then fell silent. The property gates stood open, the road beyond empty. Mira Rios, bride, daughter, niece, had vanished on the morning she was meant to say, "I do." The hush transformed into chaos. Guests whispered behind gloved hands. Bridesmaids clutched their bouquets, as if they might vanish too. Jay and Lena scoured every corner, guest rooms, powder rooms, even the garden pavilion where the rehearsal had been held. Their footsteps pounded on polished floors and gravel paths. "Call the police," Jay instructed a trembling butler. His mind raced. Had Mira fled by choice? Would he ever see her again? Lena's voice echoed down the corridor. "Mira, please respond." Silence answered. Jay pressed his ear to every door, every crevice. The soundproofing in these old walls was legendary. Even a whisper might not carry. But there was nothing. In the carriage house, the driver opened every door. Not a shoe, not a hairpin. The chapel bell rang again as the morning shadows shifted. Jay's forehead dampened with sweat. Lena found Myra's slippers neatly tucked beneath the bed. She couldn't have walked out barefoot, she said, panic rising. Something's wrong. Outside, the police arrived. Officers fanned out, forming lines across the sprawling lawn. Drones hovered overhead, scanning every inch. Jay watched a uniformed detective crouch before the flower beds, magnifying glass in hand. Lena hovered at Jay's side, grasping his arm. "They'll find her," she muttered, but her voice trailed off. Uncle Trent emerged, hands clasped behind his back. "This is unfortunate," he said flatly. But girls have been known to bolt. We should respect her choice. Jay's jaw clenched so hard he could taste blood. Don't you lie to me, he snarled. You know something. Trent's lips twitched in a half-smile. I know Mira better than you do, Jay. Then he turned away. Behind them, a uniformed officer approached Lena. Did anyone see anything unusual last night? Anyone enter or leave the chapel wing? Lena shook her head. No, just Trent and his staff. They were here until late. The officer scribbled notes. Jay watched Trent's retreating back, suspicion coiling in his gut. The man who claimed to love Mira had locked her away. As the sun climbed, drones circled higher. The chapel bell had fallen silent. Inside, the bouquet of lilies meshed with the creeping dread. Myra's voice echoed in Jay's mind. I'm here, please. But no one heard her yet. At noon, Trent convened a meeting in the library. He sat at the head of the walnut table, arms crossed. Jay and Lena stood on either side of Detective Okafor, who flip-charted the timeline. Arrival at 5 p.m., rehearsal at 7 a.m., disappearance at 7 a.m. She probably panicked. Trent asserted, we should postpone until she calms down. Lena's eyes blazed. Mira isn't childish. Trent didn't flinch. Brides get overwhelmed. Jay slammed his fist on the table, rattling crystal vases. Enough. You locked her in that closet. Trent's calm facade cracked. That's preposterous. Lena leaned forward. Your niece told Amy you locked it. Trent's gaze flicked away. Children lie. She'd run if she wanted. Detective Okafor studied him quietly. Later, Lena found Amy in the nursery. The 10-year-old sat coloring, a drawing of a tiny door scrawled in crayon. Aunt Lena. Amy asked softly, Did you open it? Lena's heart seized. Which one? Amy pointed at her sketch. The one Uncle Trent locked. The words hung in the air like a confession. Lena's blood ran cold. She sprinted to the hallway closet. The ornate panel gleamed in the afternoon light. Katrina, the housekeeper, hovered nearby. It's broken, Lena said, voice raw. Locked from inside. Katrina sighed. Mr. Trent insisted on new hardware. Lena's hand trembled as she tugged. The door didn't budge. She studied the frame. Fresh scratch marks scored the wood. Detective Okafor crouched beside her. Give me that crowbar. He pried. With a crack, the lock splintered. Inside, the empty closet yawned, coats, old photo albums, the smell of mothballs. No sign of struggle beyond dust kicked up on the floor. Lena's tears fell unchecked. Outside the library, Jay stared at Trent. His voice was ice. You'll regret this. Trent met his gaze evenly. She might have saved us the embarrassment. Okafor stepped between them. Sir, you're coming with us for questioning. Trent's eyes glinted. I'll cooperate, he said softly. But as he followed the officer out, Lena realized something terrible. No one believed a hidden closet could hold a bride. They returned to the closet with shovels and pliers. Jay's chest heaved with every breath. Lena held Amy's drawing, comparing it to the closet door. Detective Okafor directed technicians to sweep for fibers, fingerprints. Myra's phone. But none of this would matter if she wasn't alive. Inside the false-back wall, they discovered a latch. Jay pressed it. A panel swung open to reveal a narrow crawl space. His flashlight beam landed on torn fabric and dusty footprints. Lena returned with blankets and water bottles. She couldn't survive long without help. Hundreds watched as Jay crawled in. His suit tore. Dirt stained his shirt. Lena followed, flashlight in hand. The crawl stretched 15 feet, ending at a low chamber. Mira lay curled on the wooden floor, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Her wrists were bound in plastic straps. Dark bruises arced across her skin. Jay, she croaked. He knelt, undoing the restraints. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Lena covered her with a blanket. Myra's dress was shredded, veil tangled. The room reeked of sweat and stale air. Jay pressed his cheek to hers, trembling. I'll never leave you again, he vowed. Outside, the assembled crowd fell silent. Cameras clicked, but the moment felt private. Two hearts shattered, reunited. Mira blinked up at Jay. He said I'd ruin the family. Her voice cracked. Lena squeezed her hand. We'll prove him wrong. Detective Okafor surveyed the scene. It's premeditation, he said into his radio. Technicians dusted the chamber. Jay's jaw clenched as they lifted a discarded syringe. He drugged her, Lena whispered. Mira shuddered. He said I'd think it was my fault. Her tears glistened in the beam. As Mira was carried out, the false wall clanged shut. The hollow closet now stood as evidence of betrayal. Jay helped her rise, guiding her into the sunlight. Her face was pale, but her eyes held fierce determination. The family watched, stunned into silence. Trent was nowhere in sight. The closet remained, a silent witness to a crime no one could ignore. Mira stepped into the waiting ambulance, wrapped in Lena's arms. Jay climbed in beside her. The doors closed. The siren wailed, a promise that justice would follow. Mira spent hours in the hospital, undergoing exams. Jay held her hand whenever she woke. Lena didn't leave her side. The medical team confirmed bruises, dehydration, and mild poisoning. Doctors frowned at the trace of sedative in her bloodstream. An uncommon drug, hard to source. That detail would matter later. Detective Okafor interviewed Mira in a private room. Her voice was shaky but clear. Uncle Trent said I disgraced the family name. He locked me away because he didn't want me to marry Jay. He nodded, jotting notes. Outside, Trent's lawyer arrived, demanding access. Okafor refused. Until we finish our inquiry. The lawyer bristled, then departed. At home, neighbors whispered rumors, cold feet, runaway bride. Lena posted updates on a private group for close friends. Jay refused interviews, but he released a statement. Mira is safe. We trust the police to handle this. His simple words resonated more than any press blitz could. Meanwhile, officers searched Uncle Trent's estate. In the basement, they uncovered a duplicate crawl space, soundproofed, sleeping bags, rope. An old diary lay open, pages yellowed. Trent's cursive ranted about preserving bloodlines, erasing disgrace. The words chilled Jay's soul. Mira recovered slowly. She learned to sleep with the lights on. Images of the closet haunted her dreams. Yet each morning she awoke determined. She wanted to testify. Lena helped her practice her statement, voice growing stronger with each repetition. The media buzzed. Headlines ranged from royal wedding nightmare to bride imprisoned by family. Jay watched reporters camp outside his home. This isn't who we are, he told Mira. She squeezed his hand. We'll let the truth speak. He nodded, pride shining through exhaustion. In a remodeling meeting, Myra's mother demanded the closet be demolished. Contractors nodded sympathetically. She envisioned a reading nook, a place of light to replace the darkness. Every plan traced her path, from victim to survivor. She would rebuild. That evening, Jay and Mira walked the gardens by moonlight. The chapel bell tolled once, a solemn echo. Mira pressed her hand to her heart, where terror had lived. I'm not missing, she whispered. I'm here. And for the first time since dawn, she believed it. Late that night, the mansion exhaled a heavy stillness, broken only by the distant hum of the security system and the soft constancy of the air conditioning. Lena lay on her narrow cot in the guest room, eyes wide under the thin white sheet that offered little comfort. Her mind replayed the discovery of the crawl space, Myra's terrified eyes, Jay's trembling promise, and Uncle Trent's cold detachment. She could not silence the echo of Myra's whispered plea. I'm here, please. Hours had passed since Mira was rescued, but Lena's heart raced as if the danger remained imminent. She knew the house still held secrets, as if the walls themselves conspired to protect Trent's sinister plan. Sleep was impossible. Finally, driven by unease rather than rest, Lena rose and slipped into silence. She retrieved her flashlight from her purse, its beam sharp in the dim corridor. She crept toward the once-hidden closet, just outside Myra's former suite. Her footsteps hushed on the plush carpet. The door stood slightly ajar, the splintered wood still raw from the earlier forced entry. She switched off the flashlight and pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear, beyond the empty chamber. Nothing but the hush of the night. She furrowed her brow, convinced someone remained hidden. The oppressive darkness seemed to ripple. Then a faint thud. Lena startled, heart hammering against her ribs. She flicked the flashlight back on and shone it on the far side of the closet, where a loose panel revealed a narrow gap in the wall. Her breath caught as she saw the edge tremble, as though something on the other side had brushed it. "Mira," she whispered, voice a-quiver. No answer, only the thud again, softer this time, like a muted knock. Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. She yanked her phone from her pocket and dialed Detective Okafor. Each ring stretched the tension. 1, 2, 3. Dispatch confirmed he was still at the station. Seconds later, Lena heard the unmistakable whir of footsteps outside. Jay emerged from the shadowed hallway, eyes red-rimmed. "Lena," he whispered. She pointed. He followed her beam as she approached the panel. He knelt, inspecting the faint scratches and the slight give of the wood. "There's someone there," Lena said, voice low. "I think he hid someone else in there." Jay's face went pale, sorrow and rage mingling. He pressed his ear against the gap. Another thud, then a muffled voice. "Help please here." "Mira?" No, another, unfamiliar. Lena's stomach lurched. Trent wasn't finished. They backed away and waited, tension coiled like a spring. Moments later, Detective Okafor and his partner arrived, flashlights drawn. Lena recounted the night's discoveries. Okafor set to work prying at the panel's edges. With a final, metallic crack, the panel swung inward to reveal a second crawl space, smaller, more cramped, where a trembling figure lay curled in fetal position. The detective stepped back, covering the figure with a blanket. Jay knelt to comfort the person, a teenage girl with wide eyes and tear-streaked cheeks. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Trent's crimes were deeper and more brazen than they had imagined. In that moment, the silent closet transformed from a tomb of secrets into a beacon of survival. The night's true horror finally unveiled itself. By first light, the mansion's rooms buzzed with urgent activity. Police technicians swarmed the hallway like ants, photographing every scratch and splinter. Jay and Lena hovered at the perimeter, watching Detective Okafor coordinate efforts. The newly discovered victim, a 14-year-old neighbor's daughter named Nkechi, lay on a stretcher, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale but conscious. Mira, still recovering in the hospital, insisted on being present. At her side, Lena supported her arm as they approached the scene. "Jay," Mira whispered, voice trembling but determined. "He planned this, for more than just me." She pointed at the panel, now fully removed. "He kept her here the same way." Lena squeezed Myra's hand. Okafor nodded. "We'll document everything." He handed Mira a pair of gloves. "If you're up to it." Myra's lips curved into a resolute smile. "I have to." Inside the cramped crawl space, Mira crouched beside Nkechi, who reached out a trembling hand. Their eyes met, shared terror and relief. Mira brushed a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. "You're safe now," she said softly. Nkechi's tears fell unchecked. "I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth." Myra's heart clenched. "We'll find him." Outside, Jay watched the interaction through the flashlight's beam. He swallowed hard, longing to erase every trace of pain. The technicians uncovered more evidence: a discarded syringe, empty pill bottles, brittle restraints, and Polaroid photos showing Trent with other bound girls. Evidence of a methodical predator. Lena photographed each item, her stomach churning. Trent's motive strayed beyond racism and control. These girls were trophies in his twisted world. Each photograph cemented his guilt. She looked at Mira, whose violet eyes burned with resolve. "We have what we need," Lena said quietly. By noon, the entire closet space had been dismantled. Contractors worked to stabilize the wall, but the hallway felt irreparably altered, its innocence shattered. As detectives loaded evidence into sealed bags, Mira turned to Jay. "I don't want this memory to vanish." She placed her hand on the panel's rough edge. "I want everyone to see how dark that space was." Jay nodded. "We'll memorialize it." Lena added, "We'll include Nkechi's testimony." Mira exhaled, tears spilling. "Thank you for listening." Detective Okafor approached with a solemn expression. "We've also uncovered financial records," he said. "Transfers to offshore accounts, payments to unregistered storage units, places where he stashed supplies. He met Jay's gaze. Trent's network runs deeper than we thought. Jay's fists clenched. I want him behind bars forever. Mira stood taller, her newly repaired strength shining. He won't hurt anyone else. Beneath the glaring hallway lights, they vowed justice, and the forced entry served as the catalyst. In the sterile brightness of the hospital conference room, Mira faced a panel of homicide detectives, prosecutors, and a stenographer. She sat upright in her wheelchair, dressed in a simple white gown, her hair pulled back to expose the bruises along her collarbone. Opposite her sat her uncle's defense attorney, crisp in navy, a folder brimming with motions and pleas. The air hummed with anticipation. Jay and Lena flanked Mira, silent pillars of support. Please state your full name for the record. The lead detective began. Mira inhaled deeply. Mira Rios, she said, voice steady. A nod. On the morning of your wedding, where did you wake up? Mira closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Inside my home, locked in a hidden closet, behind a false wall. She opened her eyes, meeting every pair of legal gazes. Uncle Trent drugged me at 4 a.m., carried me down the hall, and locked me inside. Lena's hand found Myra's. The room shifted as if on a pivot. The prosecutor clicked a pen. What did he say to you? Silence fell. Mira swallowed. He told me I'd ruin the family by marrying Jay. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. Because I'm half black and half Filipino. He said our bloodline would be polluted. He said policing our name was worth anything, even me. Her gaze flicked to the defense attorney. He shifted uneasily. Outside the windows, a riot of summer light slanted in, illuminating dust motes. The attorney rose. Ms. Rios, isn't it true you were experiencing emotional distress prior to the wedding? Cold feet, uncertainty. Myra's eyes narrowed. No, I was excited. I'd never been happier. She inhaled, voice strong. The only distress I felt was fear. Fear that someone I trusted could do this to me. She raised her hand, pointing at a diagram of the closet. I worked tirelessly on my gown, on my vows. He took that from me. A soft sob rippled through the room. As the defense attorney sat, defeated, the prosecutor leaned forward. You also testified to hearing other voices behind that wall. Mira nodded. I heard a girl, and when we returned, it was Nkechi. She swallowed tears. He wasn't just punishing me. He had other victims. Jay's hand found hers, squeezing. Lena dabbed at her eyes. The stenographer's pen scratched faster. Defense counsel stared at the table, silent. Mira exhaled one last time. He said he'd rather bury the truth than let me bury his pride. The room held its breath. Weeks of investigation peeled back layers of Trent's life. Detective Okafor led teams into storage units scattered across 2 states, climate-controlled vaults where he had stashed evidence, cellulose insulation, padded restraints, soundproofing panels, and dozens of unmarked syringes. Each discovery revealed meticulous premeditation. For every new closet, there was a matching blueprint buried in Trent's study, a blueprint he thought would never see daylight. Meanwhile, journalists swarmed the district courthouse, hungry for revelations. But Mira and Jay refused to be drawn into sensational headlines. They held one press conference, concise, dignified, focused on justice rather than spectacle. Myra's voice carried across national broadcasts. This is about accountability, not revenge. Lena managed logistics behind the scenes, ensuring every statement reflected Myra's integrity. The public saw a victim who refused to be victimized again. Behind the scenes, Trent's financial empire lurched toward collapse. Auditors traced lopsided donations to his family fund, shuttered businesses, and offshore accounts rumored to finance dark clandestine projects. His once respected reputation disintegrated as stockholders demanded answers. Bankers froze accounts, trustees called in loans, all because Trent believed he could bury his secrets behind walls no one would breach. Mira visited the refurbished reading nook in her childhood home. The former closet transformed into a sunlit alcove. She ran her fingers across the smooth wooden bench and placed a single white lily on the windowsill. He didn't want anyone to know, she whispered to Lena. But now everyone does. Lena nodded, eyes moist. You turned his prison into a memorial. Mira smiled softly. For all the women he thought no one would listen to. The afternoon light filtered through lace curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing like whispers of long-buried truths. As trial day approached, Trent's lawyer attempted a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for partial confession. Prosecutors refused. They had enough evidence for first-degree charges. Mira prepared to testify again, this time about the girl who never spoke, Lorraine, the ex-wife whose disappearance had haunted the family for years. When the defense counsel objected, the judge overruled, citing newly uncovered forensic evidence. Trent's carefully constructed facade crumbled. What he didn't want known would be his undoing. The courtroom overflowed on the first day of testimony about Lorraine's disappearance. Years earlier, Lorraine had vanished without trace, her sisterly laughter erased from family gatherings, her face fading from photographs. Trent claimed she ran away. No one questioned it. Now, forensic teams presented bone fragments found in a remote wooded area, identified by dental records as Lorraine's. The prosecution's expert described how the crawl space in the cabin had been replicated exactly. Soundproof insulation, reinforced door. Lorraine had been held there, too, silenced until she could no longer speak. Mira sat poised as the expert spoke, her gaze unwavering. Jay reached for her hand under the bench. He thought no one would hear her screams, she said quietly. That closet was too well sealed. Lena pressed tissues into her lap. The defense attorney spluttered objections about chain of custody, but the judge allowed the evidence. Lorraine's final moments were reconstructed, drugged, restrained, hidden. The jury saw images of the identical panels, the crushed cigarette, but bearing Terry's DNA, the broken syringe. Outside the courtroom, a hush fell over spectators. A single mother wept openly, hugging her son. Clergy members whispered prayers. Trent sat stone-faced, legal briefs crumpling in his lap. He had believed his victims would vanish without witness, their voices muted by fear and walls. But Lorraine's remains echoed one truth. Silence is a choice of the living, not the dead. On the stand, Mira described waking in that space, the suffocating darkness that no one heard, a darkness that swallowed sound and hope. She recounted how she whispered to herself, "If no one hears me, then I will listen to my own voice." That mantra had guided her through therapy, through testimony, and through every sleepless night. "I refuse to be erased," she said, voice ringing through the hushed chamber. "I refuse to be silent." The jury deliberated 3 days. When they returned guilty on all counts, kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, attempted poisoning, and murder, the gavel's echo felt like a sigh of relief for all the silenced voices. Mira exhaled, tears sliding down her cheeks as she joined Jay and Lena in a group hug. Outside, the sun shone brighter than she remembered, as if the world itself rejoiced that at last, someone heard the ones who could no longer speak. Detective Okafor's team arrived at Trent's secluded countryside home just before dawn. The air was thick with mist, and the gravel driveway crunched under officers' boots. Jay and Lena followed closely, hearts pounding with dread. Mira, still fragile from surgery, insisted on coming along, her wheelchair pushed by Lena. The house loomed silent, its white paint dulled by years of neglect. Windows shuttered, doors barred. "It feels like a tomb," Mira whispered, voice trembling. Jay gripped her hand. "We'll find the truth." Inside, every hallway echoed with their footsteps, as if the walls themselves remembered long-forgotten screams. They began in the dusty foyer, where an ornate staircase curved upward into darkness. Officers swept the ground floor, study, kitchen, parlors. Nothing out of place, until they reached the basement door. It groaned on rusted hinges, revealing a cavernous cellar piled with cardboard boxes and old furniture. Okafor's partner found fresh insulation scraps near the back wall. "Soundproofing," he muttered. Jay's stomach twisted. Mira leaned forward. He built another closet. Guided by flashlight beams, they examined the wall. A seamless fit, no sign of a seam. Then Lena spotted a barely perceptible line of dust tracing a hidden panel's edge. With a hydraulic jack, they pried at the boards. The wood creaked and shifted. Trent's plan unveiled itself once more. Behind the panel lay a narrow crawl space, identical to the one in the mansion. Okafor exchanged a grim look with his team. Prepare to open. A final yank, and the panel crashed inward. The stale stink of confinement hit them. Myra's breath caught. "Is anyone here?" she called, voice echoing. No answer, but fresh footprints led into the darkness. Okafor crouched, following them. "Something's been moved recently." He shone his light deeper. A discarded rope, a soiled blanket, and a tattered shoe. The evidence of another victim, or maybe two, sent a chill down their spines. They cleared clutter until they could shine a light on the back of the crawl. No one remained, but the materials told the story. Food wrappers from the last week, a medication bottle labeled Schedule 2, and scraps of fabric matching a child's dress. "He kept them here," Lena said, voice shaking. Jay closed his eyes, rage coiling in his chest. Mira wheeled forward. She pressed a gloved hand to the panel's edge. He thought no one would dare open it. "We dare," Jay replied fiercely. Officers bagged the items for forensic analysis. Okafor noted every detail. The screw holes, the uneven dirt floor, the air vent duct that led outside. Upstairs, Trent's lawyer arrived in a flurry of claims and objections. Okafor escorted him to the foyer. "You know which items are contraband," he said quietly. The lawyer paled. Jay caught Myra's eye. She nodded, steely determination shining through her fear. "We'll tear down every wall," Lena vowed. "Uncover every secret." Outside, the first rays of sunlight pierced the morning mist. The house, once a fortress for crimes unspeakable, now stood exposed. As they left, Mira whispered to the breeze, "No more hiding." And for the first time, the truth felt as powerful as the rising sun. 3 days later, the grand reception hall lay silent. White roses wilted in vases, once celebratory banners, drooped along the walls. Chairs stood empty around tables, set for a feast never eaten. Jay paced the polished marble floor, phone pressed to his ear. "No, I understand. Please send everyone home." He hung up and sank onto a banquet chair, head in his hands. Lena approached, carrying a folder of canceled contracts. Caterers, florists, musicians. Each cancellation felt like a wound. Mira, in a borrowed suit, sat beside him. "This was never about the wedding," she said softly. "It was about justice." Jay nodded, eyes red. "But I wanted to marry you." Outside, Trent's attorney fought press coverage, leaking statements about emotional breakdowns and cold feet. News vans circled like vultures. Jay escorted Mira through the lobby, ignoring flashing cameras. He led her to the back terrace, where rose petals still clung to wrought iron railings. "I'm sorry," he said. Mira placed a hand on his arm. "There will be another day." Lena joined them, holding 2 coffee cups. She handed one to Jay, offering a small smile. "Tomorrow, we can toast to something better." Jay took a sip, bitterness and hope mingling on his tongue. Inside, police had seized every entry in the guest registry, confirming no one had tampered with the invitations. The only interference had come from Trent, altering guest passes, redirecting deliveries, fraying nerves until everyone doubted Myra's resolve. The press seized on rumors, but Mira refused to feed them. She released a brief statement. "Our wedding day may be gone, but our commitment stands. By calling off the festivities, we choose truth over illusion." The public response was swift and supportive. Messages of solidarity, offers of help. With Lena's help, Mira compiled emails and letters into a scrapbook titled Tokens of Faith. That evening, Jay and Mira walked the mansion's ruined gardens. The fountains were dry, hedges overgrown. Once it had symbolized hope. Now it bore witness to broken dreams and the resilience that followed. Mira stopped by a rose bush, touching a single red bloom. "We'll plant new flowers," she said. Jay nodded. "A garden of survivors." Lena snapped a photo, another memory in the scrapbook. Back in the deserted hall, they lit 2 candles on the empty altar. Jay took Myra's hand. No ceremony could mean more. She squeezed him. "Promise me," she whispered, "that no matter what, we'll stand together." Jay's voice was fierce. Always. Detective Okafor's phone buzzed as he drove to headquarters. The forensic report had just arrived. Bone fragments from 2010 positively matched Lorraine Rios. Okafor frowned, recalling the old missing persons file that sat unopened in the back room for years. He pulled over and dialed the cold case unit. "Give me everything on Lorraine Rios." Within the hour, archived records, witness interviews, and old crime scene photos filled his office. The case had gone cold when Trent's story of bipolar breakdown was accepted without question. Now the truth demanded revisiting. Mira, Jay, and Lena met Okafor in a conference room that afternoon. Blueprints of Trent's properties covered the walls. Boxes of documents lined the table. Okafor laid out the timeline. Lorraine vanished on June 14, 2010. Trent reported her missing 3 days later. No ransom demands, no body. Just a brief media notice before the case faded. Lena flipped through the old file. "We assumed she left voluntarily," she said, voice tight. No one thought to dig deeper. Mira placed a hand on the file. "We'll give her a voice now." Over the next week, Okafor's team re-interviewed old neighbors. A former groundskeeper admitted hearing muffled sounds near the same crawl space, but dismissed them as quarrels. A retired gardener recalled seeing Lorraine emerge from the cellar pale and shaken at midnight, then vanish again. That account spurred new search warrants. Forensic teams scoured the grounds again, uncovering a hidden trapdoor beneath loose floorboards. Inside lay artifacts: Lorraine's necklace, half-burned letters, a diary fragment describing fear of Trent's, anger turning darker than I could bear. The jury would learn how she fought to escape, only to be recaptured and silenced. Defense counsel tried to argue that the new evidence was circumstantial, but the combined forensic match and eyewitness accounts formed an unbreakable chain. Prosecutors added first-degree murder charges against Trent. In a private moment, Mira and Jay stood outside the evidence locker where Lorraine's belongings were stored. Mira laid a white lily atop the sealed box. "Rest now," she whispered. Jay wiped his eyes. "We'll see him pay for this." Lena snapped a photo, another page for the scrapbook, titled Voices Unburied. That day, the missing file transformed from forgotten tragedy into undeniable proof of Trent's years-long reign of terror. Myra's first therapy session took place in a sunlit room overlooking a private courtyard. Soft chairs, muted colors, and a box of tissues created a fragile haven. Dr. Adebayo, a specialist in trauma recovery, began gently. "Tell me about your dreams." Mira took a shaky breath. Darkness. A door closing. She clenched and unclenched her fists. Lena sat close by, offering silent support. Jay hovered in the doorway. Dr. Adebayo nodded. "Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget." She handed Mira a small journal. "Write what you feel, no filter." Over the next weeks, Mira attended daily sessions. She learned breathing exercises to calm panic attacks and practiced grounding techniques when flashbacks struck. Lena accompanied her to every appointment, sometimes taking notes. Jay learned how to help, pressing acupuncture points on her hand when anxiety flared, or leaving encouraging notes on her pillow. Their teamwork formed a new kind of intimacy, forged in the crucible of survival rather than romance. In one breakthrough session, Mira spoke aloud the memory of her first scream behind the closet wall, how her voice had bounced back as a hollow echo. Tears streamed as she described reaching through the cracks to touch the hands of the girl next door. "I thought I was alone," she admitted. Dr. Adebayo placed a gentle hand on hers. "You weren't. You had hope." Mira exhaled, the sound of her own breath a small victory. At home, Mira resumed small routines. Morning coffee on the terrace, calligraphy practice in the alcove that replaced the closet. She penned letters to fellow survivors she connected with online, sharing coping strategies. Lena designed a vision board of healing images, sunflowers, rivers, open skies. On the board, Mira placed a photo of her and Jay on their canceled wedding day, a reminder of the promise they still held. One evening, Mira prepared dinner for Lena and Jay, simple pasta and salad. The aroma of basil filled the kitchen. As they ate, Mira laughed at a joke Jay made. It felt foreign and wonderful. Lena raised her glass. "To new beginnings." Jay clinked his cup. To being heard. Mira closed her eyes, savoring the words. Recovery would be a long road, but she felt steps beneath her feet. She was no longer the frightened bride in a hidden closet. She was Mira Rios, survivor, advocate, voice for the silenced. The morning Trent's trial commenced. The courthouse brimmed with spectators, press, survivors, families of victims, and activists. Mira arrived in a wheelchair, wearing a navy suit that lent her dignity and strength. Jay walked beside her, his hand firm on her shoulder. Lena carried Lorraine's sealed file, to be submitted as evidence. Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Trent was ushered in, flanked by deputies, his expression unreadable. The judge called the session to order. State versus Trent Rios. Are the parties ready? The prosecutor rose. Your Honor, the state is ready. Trent's lawyer muttered into his collar. We are as well. The judge turned to Trent. You stand charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, attempted poisoning, and first-degree murder. How do you plead? Trent lifted his chin. Not guilty. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Myra's heart pounded. Jay squeezed her hand. Lena's jaw clenched. Outside, Okafor watched on surveillance monitors, prepared with months of evidence. The prosecution wasted no time calling its first witness, Nkechi, the teenager found in the crawl space. She entered on a swivel stool, eyes scanning the packed courtroom. She took a deep breath. I remember my aunt leaving, she began, voice small but unwavering. Then a man came, and everything went black. Her testimony unleashed a torrent of evidence, syringes, files, photos, financial records. Each exhibit bore Trent's fingerprints. The defense attempted to discredit witnesses, but forensic data and physical evidence were overwhelming. When it was Myra's turn, she wheeled to the stand. Lena placed a white lily at her feet. Mira faced the jury. He took my body, but he didn't take my voice. Judges leaned forward. Mira recounted her ordeal, the crawl spaces, the thuds behind the walls, the betrayal of blood. She described discovering Lorraine's remains and the vindication in the courtroom. Her voice wavered only once, when she said, I forgive myself for being afraid. She turned to look at Trent, who stared back without recognition. Closing arguments began at dusk. The prosecutor's voice thundered. This man built prisons in his own home. He silenced his victims. Today, we give them back their voices. The defense implored for empathy, citing Trent's reputation and family pressures. But the jury's faces were resolute. After 3 hours of deliberation, they returned, guilty on all counts. The gavel struck like thunder. Trent slumped, shock rippling through his features. Mira exhaled, relief and sorrow mingling. Jay stood, wrapping her in his arms as the courtroom watched. Outside, survivors gathered, chanting for justice. Lena wept openly, then smiled through her tears. Trent was led away in handcuffs. His empire of secrets crumbled. Mira stepped onto the courthouse steps, the late afternoon sun warming her face. For the first time, she felt fully alive. The world had heard her voice, and it would never be silent again. The pre-dawn fog clung to the courthouse's limestone facade as Mira, Jay, and Lena arrived for the formal arraignment. They moved as a single unit. Mira in her wheelchair, wrapped in a charcoal coat. Jay at her side. Lena just behind, clutching Lorraine's sealed file. Cameras glinted from the sidewalk, but they had grown used to the glare. Today would mark the official beginning of Trent's legal downfall. Inside, the courtroom was hushed. Prosecutors laid out the charges: aggravated kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment with enhancement, attempted poisoning, obstruction of justice, and first-degree murder in Lorraine's case. The clerk read each count with deliberate gravity. Myra's heart thudded, but this time it was steady, anchored by the knowledge that justice had caught up to Trent's depravity. Jay gripped her hand. Lena's fingers tightened around the file. Trent sat at the defense table, his posture rigid. His public composure had eroded into a withdrawn scowl. He refused to look at Mira. His attorney, M.R. D'Angelo, rose to request bail. My client poses no flight risk, he argued. He has deep roots in this community and owns property here. He will appear for every hearing. District Attorney Olajide countered, voice calm but firm. The defendant has demonstrated the capacity to conceal victims in hidden spaces, maintain burner phones, and move evidence to offshore accounts. Flight risk is self-evident. The judge, leaning forward, peered at Trent. Considering the severity and multiplicity of charges, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody until trial. A collective exhale swept the packed courtroom. As the gavel fell, Mira felt the tension ease for the first time since her captivity. Lena dabbed at her eyes. Jay whispered, "We did it." Mira nodded, tears of relief glistening. Outside, protesters gathered holding signs. "And no more invisible victims," and closed the closets of violence. Survivors marched in solidarity, including Ketchi and the neighbor's daughter, Amy. Her small figure a testament to resilience. Photographers snapped images of Mira in her wheelchair, flanked by those she saved. In the hallway, D.A. Olajide briefed the media. "Today's ruling underscores our commitment to protect the vulnerable," he said. "This case will proceed to a full trial on all counts." A reporter asked about aggravating factors. Olajide paused. Racial animus, premeditation, concealment in soundproof spaces, multiple victims, and a prior unreported homicide. These elevate the charges. The reporter nodded, scribbling furiously. While the courthouse hummed with activity, Mira retreated to a small anteroom set aside for victims. Jay remained by her side as victim services provided a counselor. Mira closed her eyes. "I feel whole," she admitted softly. Lena placed Lorraine's file on the table. "Her name is on every charge," Lena said reverently. "Her story won't be buried again." Mira opened the file, tracing Lorraine's handwritten entries. Each word reflected fear, hope, pain. "I'll testify for her too," Mira vowed. Lena squeezed her hand. "We all will." That afternoon, Jay held a private meeting with Mira and the legal team. "We need a timeline of every event," he said, voice purposeful, "from the day Lorraine disappeared to the moment Nkechi was rescued." Mira nodded, determination lighting her eyes. "I'll review my therapy notes," she offered. Lena committed to coordinating witness support. Mr. D'Angelo declined to attend. As they left the courthouse, the sun had broken through the clouds. Mira paused at the steps, feeling its warmth on her face. She inhaled deeply. Each charge filed was a promise kept. To Miranda, to Lorraine, to Nkechi, and to herself. Trent's hidden closets would give way to public scrutiny. The path ahead, trial, testimony, verdict, still loomed long. But with every paper filed, every witness secured, she felt their collective voice grow stronger. The law had caught up. The darkness was receding. And for the first time in her life, Mira Rios believed she could step fully into the light. The morning sun slanted through the high courtroom windows, illuminating dust motes drifting in the static air. Mira, Jay, and Lena arrived early, accompanied by Detective Okafor. Today's witness list was unprecedented. A former foster daughter of Trent's, Monique Baker, whose testimony would pierce the final veil of secrecy covering Trent's abuses. Monique, now 30, waited in the victim's consultation room, her posture both rigid and resolute. She turned as Lena entered. "I'm ready," she said softly. Lena nodded, offering water. At precisely 9 o'clock, the bailiff called the court to order. Monique, dressed in a navy blazer and black slacks, took the stand. The court clerk administered the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God." Monique's voice was calm. "I do." Prosecutor Olajide approached. "Ms. Baker, please state your relationship to the defendant." Monique inhaled. "I was fostered by Trent Rios for 3 years, from age 14 to 17. A hush fell. Olajide's first question. "What was that experience like?" Monique's gaze lifted, unwavering. "He was charming in public, but cruel in private," she said. She recounted nights when she sneaked out of her room only to find friends missing from the guest bedrooms. "I heard muffled screams," she testified. "I asked mothers if their daughters were okay. They said of course, but later I realized they were afraid to speak." Gasps echoed softly. The defense attorney, Mr. D'Angelo, rose. "Ms. Baker, why did you remain silent for 12 years? Her eyes flashed. Because no one believed children. And because he threatened to report me to authorities for false accusations. I feared I would be sent away. She paused. When Mira spoke, I knew I had to. I refused to let another victim suffer in silence. The judge called for order, but Monique's words had already resonated. Olajide guided Monique through specific memories, the hidden trapdoor in the pantry, the makeshift CR, closet room, in the basement, complete with ductwork from the main house. She described discovering discarded restraints and hearing the defendant's whispered threats. Each detail aligned with what Mira and Kechi had endured. Jurors scribbled notes furiously. The defense table shifted uncomfortably. Monique's final revelation stunned the courtroom. She produced an old HS tape, one Trent had sent her on her departure from his home, ostensibly for memories. Its contents, now digitized, showed Trent escorting a crying young girl into a room where the walls seemed padded. Her anguished sobs echoed before the recording abruptly cut off. Prosecutors played a 30-second clip. The jurors watched in silent horror as the camera's angle obscured the victim's face, but the muffled cries were unmistakable. Trent's lawyer stood, protest rising, but the judge overruled. The jury will see the evidence. As Monique stepped down, jurors exchanged glances of shock. Outside, Jill, Lorraine's sister, embraced Monique in a hallway hug. Mira joined them, tears pooling. "Thank you," she whispered. Monique smiled through tears. "We speak for those who can't." Jay placed a hand on Myra's shoulder. "Your courage summoned hers," he said. Lena clicked her recorder off. "Tomorrow we rest. Day after we resume." That evening, Mira sat in her reading nook, Lorraine's diary open beside her. Monique's testimony replayed in her mind. Each word had shattered the illusion of Trent as respectable family man. The past, once buried, now stood exposed. Tomorrow, they would press forward, closer to the final reckoning. And with each voice added Myra's, Nkechi's, Monique's, the chorus for justice grew impossible to ignore. Trent's empire of silence was collapsing, brick by brick, word by courageous word. 6 months had passed since the charges were filed. Mira had grown stronger, her wheelchair now a symbol of tenacity rather than fragility. Today marked the start of the penalty phase, where the jury would weigh life, without parole, against death. A hush settled as she wheeled into the cavernous courtroom, the polished wood panels reflecting the solemnity of the moment. Jay and Lena flanked her, supporters in dark suits. The gallery brimmed with survivors, families, activists, each face testament to the ripple of Trent's crimes. Trent entered last, handcuffed, escorted by deputies. His once pristine suit was rumpled, eyes hollow. He stood at the defense table, shifting uneasily as the judge addressed the jury. "Members of the jury, you have found the defendant guilty on all counts. It is now your duty to determine the appropriate sentence." The courtroom air felt suffocating, every breath laden with history, loss, and the weight of consequence. Prosecutor Olajide stepped forward, voice resonant. "This man constructed hidden prisons and homes, drugged victims, and took lives. He violated every principle of human dignity. Only a sentence reflecting the gravity, life without parole, can serve justice and protect society." He presented laminated photos, Lorraine's grave marker, every hidden closet door, blood-stained restraints, the battered faces of survivors. Each image was a testament to silence violated and lives nearly extinguished. Then the defense rose. Mr. D'Angelo spoke with practiced empathy. The defendant suffers from a severe personality disorder, rooted in childhood trauma. He believed his actions preserved family honor. He invited a psychiatrist to testify remotely, describing Trent's dissociative episodes. The expert called for mercy. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Some scoffed, others grimaced. Mira watched, body taut. Every attempt to humanize Trent felt like erasure of her trauma. Voices in her head clamored, no mercy for monsters. She clenched the armrest, knuckles white. Lena tapped her hand, grounding her. The victim impact statements followed. Nkechi recounted nightmares that still woke her at night. Monique described tremors whenever she saw a closet door. Lorraine's sister wrote a letter, read aloud by a court officer. My sister's voice begged for release. Today, I ask you to let her rest." Silence descended as the jury retired. The judge's gavel echoed once, then twice. Mira closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Jay's hand found hers, thumb brushing her palm. Lena leaned close. "No matter what, we've already won." Outside, supporters gathered, fists raised in solidarity. Hours later, the jury returned. The foreperson stood, voice steady. "We recommend life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." A collective exhale surged through the courtroom. Trent's face went slack. Mira felt tears flood her cheeks, tears of release, tears of justice. The judge pronounced sentence. "Defendant, you shall serve consecutive life terms." Court is adjourned. The deputies led Trent away, his legacy sealed in bars. Mira rose, breath shaky. Jay and Lena embraced her, the room blurring around them. Outside, sun gilded the courthouse steps. Survivors and advocates cheered softly as Mira wheeled forward, each rotation a testament to enduring strength. The courtroom's silence had broken, but outside, a chorus of voices carried their triumph. Never again. Autumn's chill settled over the county as word reached the Rios family that a hiker discovered human remains near Trent's old cabin. Mira felt a tremor in her chest when she received the call from Detective Okafor. "We need you on site." Wrapped in a burgundy coat, she, Jay, and Lena drove through Golden Woods, leaves crunching beneath their tires. At the scene, forensic teams had cordoned off a shallow grave. The air smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves, a stark reminder of cruelty buried and forgotten. Okafor greeted them gravely. The remains match Lorraine's dental records. He led them to a weathered wooden box protruding from the earth, fragments of rotted wood and rusted nails. A forensic anthropologist in latex gloves lifted bone fragments, placing them gently into evidence bags. "Skull shows blunt force trauma," she said softly. Myra's stomach clenched. "She fought him," she whispered. Lena laid a hand on her back. Jay crouched beside the box, brushing earth from its side. Engraved on one panel was Trent's initials and the date. L.R., June 14th, 10. The hiker had stumbled upon a secret previously known only to Trent. Mira studied the engraving through tears. "He kept her in a box too," she said, voice breaking. The parallels to the closet were chilling. Family tombs disguised as storage. Detectives surveyed the site, photographing every detail. A silver locket lay nearby, tarnished but intact. Inside was a faded photo of Lorraine, smiling in a summer dress. Lena picked up the locket with gloved hands, gently opening it. "She loved sunflowers," she murmured. They found a fragment of her diary, entries burned and water-damaged, but one legible passage read, "I fear he will bury me and call it a new foundation." Myra's breath caught. Her words spoke the future. Okafor led them to a clearing where a weathered foundation slab remained, circled by red and white markers. "This was the original site," he explained. "He disassembled it over the years, but the box stayed hidden." Jay knelt, picking up a rusty nail. "This nail built prisons," he said, voice raw. The forensic team recovered soil samples, matching them to residues found in Trent's basement. Each fragment completed the circle of evidence. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Mira kneeled beside the box, placing a single white lily atop the soil. She spoke aloud. "Lorraine Rios, may you finally rest." She pressed her hand against the earth, feeling the finality of her discovery. Lena set up a small brass plaque engraved, "In memory of Lorraine Rios, whose voice we now carry." Jay stood behind them, silent vigil in the fading light. Back at the crime lab, evidence was filed under murder of Lorraine Rios, ensuring the case remained open for historical record. Prosecutors amended charges to include posthumous counts of desecration and tampering with remains. The legal ramifications extended Trent's culpability beyond his lifetime of abuse. That evening, Mira lit a candle in the remodeled chapel at her home, once dining room, now memorial space. She placed the locket beside Lorraine's portrait. Jay joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Lena lit another candle. Together, they held vigil. 3 candles for 3 women silenced, now honored. Outside, a cool breeze rustled the trees as if whispering gratitude. The box in the woods had emerged from darkness. Lorraine's story, once buried, would live on through their voices and actions. Justice, they realized, was more than verdicts, it was remembrance. Winter's gray sky framed the courthouse as Trent's defense team, led by Mr. D'Angelo, approached the prosecution with a plea offer. Jay, Mira, and Lena sat in the gallery, anticipation coiling tight. 3 years of hearings, testimonies, and investigations had built to this moment. If Trent accepted involuntary manslaughter and kidnapping pleas, he could avoid a death sentence, but face life imprisonment. The prosecutor, Olajide, conferred quietly with the DA's office. Silence stretched. Breaking it, Olajide addressed the courtroom. The defendant's counsel proposes guilty pleas to reduce charges, second-degree murder, kidnapping. If the state withdraws the first-degree murder count and life, without parole recommendation. Gasps fluttered through the gallery. Myra's breath hitched. Memories of Lorraine's last plight surged. Lena gripped Myra's hand. Jay's jaw clenched. The judge asked Trent to respond. He rose, voice cautious. Your Honor, I understand the offer. He glanced toward Mira. If it spares my family further anguish, I accept. A murmur of protest rose among survivors present. The judge raised a hand. Counsel, are you in agreement? Olajide stood. The state cannot accept anything less than justice commensurate with the crimes. We refuse the plea. Trent's shoulders slumped. His lawyer's face drained. Your Honor, to risk the death penalty. The judge cut him off. You were informed of the charges. The state chooses to proceed. Silence engulfed the courtroom. Trent sank back into his chair. Mira exhaled sharply. Jay stood abruptly, turning away. Lena placed a steadying hand on Myra's shoulder. The judge scheduled a hearing for final sentencing. The plea offer's rejection meant Trent would face sentencing on all counts: murder, kidnapping, poisoning, guaranteeing life without parole. The threat of death penalty had been a bargaining chip. Now, the hammer would fall. Outside, survivors and advocates gathered, holding their own vigil. They chanted, "Justice, not mercy." Photographers captured Mira, Jay, and Lena emerging from the courthouse, determination etched on their faces. A reporter asked Mira how she felt. She paused, then spoke. Mercy belongs to the innocent. For him, there will be none. Her words resonated like a verdict of the heart. That night, Mira lay in bed, Lena and Jay asleep beside her. Lorraine's locket hung on her bedside lamp. She traced its silver edge. The plea offer had tested the limits of compassion. Could they forgive a monster who had commanded silence and death? But justice demanded accountability commensurate with cruelty. Tomorrow's sentencing would close the final chapter of Trent's reign. Mira closed her eyes, heart steady, ready for the gavel's echo. Amy Rios sat cross-legged at her school desk, crayons scattered around her. The art teacher, Mrs. Adesanya, moved quietly between desks, offering gentle guidance. When she reached Amy, she paused. Amy's drawing depicted a narrow hallway, a small door barely visible behind coats and boxes. Inside the door, a frightened girl pressed her face against a wooden panel. The scene was detailed, scratch marks on the floor, a small hand reaching out, tears streaming. Mrs. Adesanya's breath caught. She knelt beside Amy. Sweetheart, tell me about your picture. Amy looked up, eyes wide. It's the door Uncle Trent locks, she whispered. I drew what I saw. Alarmed, Mrs. Adesanya excused herself and called the school counselor, Ms. Owolabi. Within the hour, Lena and Mira sat in the principal's office, hearts pounding. Ms. Owolabi slid Amy's, drawing across the mahogany table. Myra's hands trembled as she traced the pencil lines. Lena exchanged a glance with the principal. We need to hear Amy's voice, Lena said. The principal nodded. Amy entered, clutching her drawing to her chest. Her dark eyes shone with intensity that belied her 10 years. Mira scooped her up. Tell us, baby. Amy pointed. He locked me there once, but I heard someone crying, so I shouted. Lena's throat constricted. Who did you hear? Amy hesitated, then whispered. A boy. A little boy crying, saying, help me, please. Detective Okafor had been notified. He arrived with gloves and a notepad. Amy repeated her account in hushed tones. How she watched through a crack in the closet door as Uncle Trent drugged her, then heard muffled sobs from the next chamber. When the adult guards discovered both chambers, they rescued 2 victims, but Amy's drawing suggested there was a third. Mira looked at Detective Okafor, voice steady despite tears. We have to find him. Okafor nodded. This drawing is evidence. It pinpoints a third hidden space. He asked Amy to show him where in the mansion it might be. She led them to the renovated reading nook where the original closet door had stood. There, Okafor and his team examined the floorboards near a freshly painted lower panel. The boards creaked under Lena's weight. Okafor shone his flashlight into a hairline gap. He knelt. There's something here. With Lena's help, he removed a section of paneling previously deemed solid. Inside, a crawlspace sloped down several feet. The detectives pried it open fully and revealed a frail boy curled in the corner, about 8 years old, eyes rimmed with fear, face streaked with dirt and tears. Lena lifted him gently. You're safe now, she whispered. Mira knelt beside the boy, brushing his hair away from his forehead. We're going to help you. The boy's voice trembled. I thought I was alone. Jay stepped forward, voice soft but firm. You're not alone anymore. Paramedics took the boy for medical care while detectives documented the space. Suitcases of evidence, a discarded teddy bear, scraps of clothing. Each item spoke of months of confinement. Back in the mansion's corridor, Mira hugged Amy tightly. You saved him, she said. Amy nodded, tears pooling. I'll always draw what I see. Lena smiled through her own tears. Your courage helped another child. Jay knelt, placing a comforting hand on each of them. The family stood united. 5 survivors once hidden, now free. Amy's innocent drawing had shattered Trent's final secret. In that moment, the walls of silence and fear crumbled, replaced by collective resolve to protect the vulnerable. Justice had grown stronger by the brush of a child's crayon. The final verdict day arrived under a low, gray sky. The courthouse steps were crowded with supporters, survivors, activists, social workers, and journalists. Inside, silence fell as Mira, Jay, and Lena entered the packed courtroom. Mira, wearing a tailored blazer and holding Lorraine's diary, wheeled onto the witness stand one last time, not as a victim, but as a champion for truth. The jury file was complete. Kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, attempted poisoning, multiple counts of assault, desecration of remains, and first-degree murder. Charges etched months of investigation into binding justice. The prosecutor, D.A. Olajide, approached with quiet confidence. He addressed the jury. You've heard testimony from 4 survivors, Mira, Nkechi, Monique, and now the rescued boy. You've seen evidence of hidden prisons, of financial records funding terror, and you've seen the remains of one victim. Today, we ask you to render a verdict that reflects the full scope of his crimes. He gestured to each survivor, their faces solemn yet resolute. The defense attorney rose, standing before Trent. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice measured. My client has acknowledged certain wrongdoing, but emotional distress and mental health issues distort the narrative. We ask for leniency. Trent remained stoic, gaze averted. The judge instructed the jury on the law. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The presumption of innocence was gone. Facts had triumphed. After hours of deliberation, the jury filed back in. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes, handed the verdict slip to the bailiff. The judge read aloud, each count affirmed, guilty on every charge. A collective exhale of relief and righteous anger filled the room. Lena pressed her hand against Myra's arm. He can't hurt anyone ever again, she whispered. Outside, applause erupted as survivors embraced one another. Journalists shouted questions. How do you feel? What message do you have for other victims? Mira, flanked by Jay and Lena, stood strong. Today, justice prevailed, she said, voice unwavering. This verdict honors every person he silenced. No one should live in fear. Her words echoed beyond the courthouse steps, resonating in hearts nationwide. Social media buzzed with solidarity hashtags. Shelters reported increased calls from survivors, inspired by Myra's courage. Back inside, the judge scheduled sentencing for the following week. Meanwhile, bail was revoked. Trent was remanded into custody, with no possibility of bail. He was led away in handcuffs, head bowed. Each click of the camera shutter felt like a hammer sealing his fate. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in bruised purples and reds, Mira, Jay, and Lena gathered in the Chapelturn Memorial. They lit candles for each survivor, each name etched on small brass plaques: Lorraine, Mira, Nkechi, Monique, and the rescued boy. The light flickered against the polished wood. Mira laid Lorraine's diary on the altar. "We speak for those who can no longer," she said softly. Jay took her hand. "And we'll keep speaking," he added. Lena released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The verdict had changed their lives forever. It also affirmed their vow to ensure no victim's voice remained unheard. In that sanctuary of light and remembrance, they honored past pain and embraced future hope. Mornings at the Rios estate had taken on a hopeful quiet. The mansion's corridors, once echoing with secrets, now witnessed reconstruction crews methodically stripping away the final traces of Trent's hidden spaces. Mira observed the transformation from her reading nook, once the clandestine closet, now a sunlit alcove stacked with books on healing and survivor memoirs. She rose and walked, supported by Jay's strong arm, toward the hallway where the closet had stood. Contractors had already removed the false panel. Drywall dust coated the floor. Lena joined them, carrying a tray of tea. "They'll finish tearing out the rest today," she said. Mira inhaled the scent of fresh paint mixed with sawdust, a strangely comforting blend. "I want to watch," she replied. The contractor, Mr. Benson, greeted them. "We'll start on the secondary wall now, Ms. Rios." He tapped a hammer against the wood frame. This section had the latch for the second chamber. Mira nodded, steeling herself. As the hammer struck, wood and plaster splintered, revealing the cavity behind. Jay knelt to remove debris, exposing the faint outline of another panel. Mira watched children from the neighborhood, now too old to fear the house, peer curiously through the opening. The contractor paused, asking permission. Mira gave a slight nod. The panel came away entirely, laying bare the dark recess. But instead of hidden horrors, the space had been cleared clean weeks earlier. Now it stood empty, a void representing a chapter closed. Amy and the rescued boy, now safe and thriving in foster care, arrived with necklaces made of paper beads. They hung them on nails driven into the exposed frame. "For hope," Amy said, voice soft. The boy placed his handprint, painted blue, on the edge of the doorway. Families and survivors stood in a loose circle around the frame. Mira spoke. "This closet held our fear and our courage in equal measure. Today, we remove its threshold forever." With a final swing of the hammer, Mr. Benson detached the remaining support beam. The frame collapsed inward. Contractors cleaned the rubble. The wall was sealed with fresh drywall. Inside the former closet space, Lena placed a wooden bench crafted by Jay's father. "A place to sit," Lena said, eyes moist. Mira ran her hand along the smooth surface. "A place to reflect," she added. Contractors installed a small skylight above, allowing natural light to filter in. Mira hung a framed photograph, 5 survivors standing hand in hand. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "Here stood walls of fear. Here stands hope reborn." As work concluded, the family led a quiet dedication ceremony. A local pastor blessed the space, invoking words of healing and resilience. Neighbors offered stories of how they'd once feared the hallway, a silent sentinel of dread, in contrast to its bright new purpose. Mira closed her eyes, feeling the weight of silent testimonies lifting. Jay kissed her forehead. "We built something beautiful." Lena smiled. From brokenness, the remodeled hall returned to its role as a living space. No secrets, only open doors. In that reclaimed corridor, the Rios family affirmed that darkness could be dismantled, but memory would guide steps toward lasting light. Exactly 1 year after the dawn Mira had vanished, she and Jay met in the garden glade at sunrise. The air was crisp with promise, dew sparkling on rose petals. Guests numbered fewer than a dozen. Lena, Amy, Nkechi, Monique, child survivors, their caregivers, and a handful of devoted friends. No florists, no media, no fanfare, only authenticity. Mira wore a simple silk dress in dove gray, Jay a linen suit in soft ivory. The officiant, the same pastor who blessed the new alcove, stood before a trellis woven with wildflowers. Jay took Myra's hand, voice thick with emotion. Mira Rios, through darkness you found your voice. Through fear you found courage. With every step, you've taught me the power of truth. Myra's eyes glistened. Jay Hart, you held me when I could not stand. You listened when I could not speak. With every breath, you've shown me the strength of love. Their vows were unhurried, heartfelt, spoken as if between only the two of them, even though all present felt as close as heartbeats. Lena and Amy served as witnesses. Child survivors fluttered around, giggling and holding small bouquets of lavender and chamomile. A hush fell as Mira slipped a simple silver ring onto Jay's finger. Then Jay slid a matching band onto Myra's hand. The pastor pronounced them partners in life, not bound by ceremony, but by choice renewed. No kiss was broadcast, yet every witness held breath before exhaling in collective joy. Afterward, they strolled the garden, pausing where vines trailed along the trellis. Conversations bubbled around. Nkechi shared her plans to study law, so she could defend other survivors. Monique announced she'd enroll in counseling to aid traumatized youth. Amy showed Lena her latest drawings, each one a scene of hope. Mira and Jay listened, hearts wide. Lena captured moments with a hand-drawn scrapbook, each page annotated in Myra's handwriting. A modest brunch followed at a long table under string lights. They toasted with sparkling water infused with mint and tangerine. Jay raised his glass. To new beginnings, to voices heard, to love unbroken. Guests echoed the sentiment, glasses clinking softly. Mira began a short speech. Today is about justice and healing. We stand here not as victims, but as survivors committed to life and to each other. She paused, tears shining. And so, we vow again, to protect the powerless, to speak for the silenced, and to live free. As the sun climbed, laughter rose amid the breeze. Children chased butterflies. Survivors shared quiet reflections. Lena snapped a final photo. Mira and Jay framed by the trellis, surrounded by 5 shining faces. In that serene ceremony, marked by absence of spectacle, they celebrated life reclaimed. The quiet wedding, unlike the grand affair meant to trap Mira in darkness, became a vow of resilience whispered in the dawn. Months after the quiet wedding, Mira stood before a small audience at the newly established Rio Center for Survivors, a renovated guest wing in the mansion offering counseling, legal aid, and creative workshops. Her voice carried calm authority. He tried to silence us, she began, but our stories proved louder. She gestured to portraits lining the walls, survivors' faces captured mid-smile, mid-courage. This space exists because once we were locked behind walls. Now we open doors for others. Jay, serving on the advisory board, joined her at the podium. He introduced a series of programs. Art therapy led by Monique, legal clinics headed by Nkechi's mentor, and writing workshops guided by Amy's teacher. Children played quietly in a sunlit room, painting affirmations on canvases. Each element reflected collective healing. Lena oversaw administrative details. Her organizational prowess ensured the center ran smoothly. She greeted each visitor by name, offering coffee and reassurance. Mira moved through the rooms, pausing to hug a former neighbor, greet a graduate of their counseling program, and sign donation forms from community supporters. The mansion's former closets, once symbols of entrapment, had become offices, therapy rooms, and gathering spaces. Later, as dusk settled, Mira returned to the reading nook. She traced her fingers over the brass plaque. Here stood walls of fear. Here stands hope reborn. She opened Lorraine's diary, now preserved in a glass case beside a single white lily. Outside, Jay joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Look at what we've built," he murmured. Mira leaned into him. "He tried to bury me, but I'm still here." Her voice caught, then steadied. "And I will stay here for every woman, every child who needs a voice." In the silence that followed, the wind rustled through the garden trees, carrying laughter from within. The mansion's corridors no longer echoed threats. They resonated with footsteps moving toward healing. Mira closed her eyes, feeling gratitude swell. The darkness had not claimed her story. It had amplified her resolve. She whispered, "I'm still here." Jay kissed her temple. "And we're here with you." Lena joined them, lifting Amy onto her shoulders. The boy who'd been rescued played at their feet, giggling as he chased fireflies. Under the gentle glow of the palace lamp, the Rios family stood together, voices once silenced, now a chorus of compassion and action. The final line of Myra's journey was not an end, but a beginning, an unbreakable promise that wherever walls sought to imprison, they would be torn down, replaced by spaces of hope. In that moment, she embodied every whispered vow, every drawn line, every steadfast heartbeat. I'm still here. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, comment, and share. Also turn on the bell to get more of our videos. See you in the next story.